So yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast, Nerida. Really interested and excited to hear what insights you can give us, and very thankful of you giving up your time. Rather than me giving an overview of your background, I thought it'd be better if you do it. So I guess over to you, really.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. So I'm Nerida Rooney. I'm the head of employer brand and strategic resourcing at Kier. We're a large construction company, construction and infrastructure company, and we maintain most of the roads within the UK and build hospitals, prisons, schools. So quite a lot of big projects, and we're obviously doing HS2 as part of a joint venture. My career background, I've been in recruitment almost 20 years now, which actually makes me feel very old. It's even older when you start seeing people's CVs where they have their date of birth and it's like in the year 2000s. That's very concerning to me because that feels like it was only 5 years ago. And prior to working at Kier, I was at Carlsberg for 5 years, managing the recruitment there. And actually, prior to that, I was working in charities doing the recruitment, so Save the Children, Amnesty International and Refuge. So quite a varied career with very different industries. And I've actually only been in the UK for 13 years now. So originally from Australia, which is a completely different way of recruitment as well. So when I came to the UK during the recession, I started again, which was quite humbling actually. But yeah, it's an exciting time to be in recruitment because it is so tough.
Yeah. Wow, I mean, that's three very different industries. So charities, alcohol basically, and construction. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest difference that you have seen between the three industries from a recruitment perspective?
Yeah, so within charities, we do everything on a shoestring budget. There is zero room for agencies. And actually very limited budget for job boards as well. So we had to recruit quite creatively. There was no LinkedIn recruiter seats at all. It was having to manually connect with a lot of people and trying to engage with people in different ways. Carlsberg, obviously quite a cheeky company from a marketing point of view. So we pushed the boundaries quite a lot with the way we'd write adverts and the way we attracted candidates as well. So, but actually quite a small business within the UK. There was only, I think there's at the time about 1,700 people, so quite tiny. To then go to Kier, who are much more risk averse. We work a lot with the government, so on government projects, so we have to be quite mindful with how we market externally. But yeah, very different, and our budgets within construction are so tiny. So the profit that you make is 1, maybe 2% of a project, so really tiny margin. So very different. But I think I've learned quite a lot about how to attract different people within those industries by moving around. I think a good recruiter can recruit anything, and I think when I recruit into my team, I'm really mindful of that, of bringing people with different experiences in because they bring a different approach.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely fascinating. You must have some very interesting stories having moved from Carlsberg to Kier and gone, this would be a great idea for a strapline for a candidate, attraction program, and everybody goes, whoa, we built prisons.
yeah, you're right, and I think it was a big learning curve as well for me because I remember thinking, can we not just do that ourselves, or can we not just say that? No, it needs to be in a specific tone of voice, or we need to run it by marketing, for example. So yeah, it's definitely different, but I think the scope of the team that we have allows for us to have a more aligned strategy with our overall business values and missions. And I think when you're in a smaller company, it can be you have a bit more free reign, where here we absolutely work as part of a team and work part of an overall business strategy rather than just the recruitment one.
Amazing. It's one of those things that it's one of those brands. I mentioned this to you before that, until we were having this conversation, I knew who they were and I knew that it was a big business, Kier. But then all of a sudden you just see it everywhere and you're just like, wow, my unconscious brain has been taking this in, but now I'm super conscious of how massive the organisation is.
And I think the other thing to say as well is whenever I mention that I work for Kier to family and friends, I always have to talk about it being a construction and infrastructure business because they instantly think of the car company and they think I work for Kier. They usually go, oh, do you get cheap cars? Like, do you get a discount? I was like, no.
You get a cheap road.
I get some PPE when I have to go to site. Woohoo! It's good. But yeah, we definitely don't get a cheap Kia car.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of challenge in itself. I guess, sort of talking about employer branding from that perspective, as a pretty monolithic business, really, a large corporate organisation that powers the UK in lots of different areas, but lots of people haven't heard of. How do you actually go about going, okay, well, how do we get the candidates that, maybe aren't in construction or whatever? How do you go about getting that new, fresh talent into the business and excited about the brand?
Yeah, so I think if we're looking for, so people within the industry absolutely know who we are. So we're a major competitor for so many of them. So I think when we say Kier, they sort of get it. When we're looking for people outside of the industry or that early careers talent, we do a lot of work with schools. We have a sustainability social value team as well that work with local schools in local regions to get them excited about careers within construction. And then we work with universities directly as well to support their journey and for them to come to us when they need a summer placement or an industrial placement to help with any of those bridging or gap years. So I think from outside of the industry, it's easy for us to do that at early careers space than it is to maybe transfer somebody from aviation, for example, into construction midway through their career. I say that, but we have got somebody in my own team who is she used to be a cabin crew for a large aviation company, and she started as an apprentice, and she's just been promoted into a recruiter as well. So she certainly had a really lovely journey, and I think when they come outside of the industry, they just have more of a passion or want to be able to just push themselves that little bit further because they know how much it means to them. So, yeah, early careers a lot more than midway through their career, unfortunately.
So, and then from a competitive standpoint, how do you go about, my imagination or experience with the construction industry is the sort of merry-go-round of talent where you have some people that work project-based and they just go from project to project. You have some people that are journeymen, so they'll do, 1 year here, 1 year there, etc., but full-time employment. And then you have, the absolute lifers that will stay with your organisation for 30, 40 years, right? How do you, from an attraction perspective, how do you sort of differentiate yourself against your competition at the moment?
Yeah, I think you're right. There is so many different facets with that. We have, certainly in the past had people, leave the business for £1 an hour extra down the road for one of our competitors because, especially in the current climate, cost of living is going up as well. That's a lot of money for people in specific parts of their careers. From an attraction point of view, we are doing more at retaining our staff. So, talking about our compensation package as an overall reward package rather than just this is your basic salary, because we have some really fantastic initiatives that go on top of their basic salary. So, for example, we've just launched our new family-friendly policies, which increases maternity leave from 20 weeks to 26 weeks full pay. And our paternity pay as well has gone from 2 weeks to 8 weeks. So, for somebody to be able to have 8 weeks off when they have a newborn baby is almost unheard of within the industry, and actually outside of the industry as well.
Yeah.
So
2 days.
Yeah, I mean, my husband got 0, so he had only, because we couldn't afford to take statutory, so he just took his annual leave. So I think doing more things like that to make people feel valued ahead of when people might come and knock on their door, for example. But obviously that only goes so far as well. If you're not looking to add to your family, or you're not looking to have children at all, for example, then those sort of benefits aren't of interest. So that's when we have other benefits, like our green car scheme, for example, where they can get cheap electric or hybrid cars. They can take that out of their salary pre-tax, and then be able to sort of claim some of that. So yeah, I think there's definitely other ways that we're doing to attract people as part of an overall reward package. But from a project point of view, we have a long-standing pipeline as well. So we're a stable business. And I think with so many of our smaller competitors going under, during COVID and post-COVID, that stability is really important to so many people in the market. So I think that's definitely been something that we've been able to promote, to give people that security that they are so desperately looking for.
Absolutely. So what would you say is your biggest talent challenge that you're facing at the moment?
The biggest challenge in the industry is there isn't enough people to do the work that is out there. We, bid for work, and we expect there to be the talent there, but not a lot of our competitors are actually growing enough of their talent. So, we have quite a large early careers intake. We do it, twice a year. We do apprenticeships sort of 4 times a year. So every quarter we'll bulk it together to do it that way. And we have constant pipelines of that early careers in order to train talent in the industry. Mm-hmm. But we can't keep up with the demand. And that's something that you need to train, 5-6 years ahead of that. We've had COVID, so we've had a lot of people that have, just wanted to either retire early or have more of a balance and want to go and do teaching, for example. So there's so many different avenues that people are looking for more balance within their life. So that's definitely a challenge. IR35 and Brexit as well. So we've had people go back to their home countries as well. So that's obviously had an impact from the industry. So yeah,
it's tough.
Lots of challenges.
Yeah. What's the kind of one thing that you think is going to help Kier come through on top when it comes to that lack of talent? Is there a specific kind of initiative that you think is going to make a difference? It sounds like early careers is quite a big one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Early careers, absolutely. We have a program that is called Making Ground, which is our prison program. So we work with people currently in the prison network, and we arrange for them to have the relevant training while they're in prisons, and give them ROTL, so release on temporary license, opportunities to come out and use some of that training in practice on our sites, and then give them permanent opportunities at the end of that when they're able to come out of prison. So there's so many people within that network that need a second chance, and they just need to be able to get out there and have a job and get out of that constant cycle that they may be in. And we hear a lot from people in those programs that they just want to do their family proud. And I think that's the piece that can be so rewarding in the work that we do, because we're obviously, we're doing it to, support some of the skills shortage that we do have, but we also generally want them to be able to have a life outside of prison as well. And it doesn't just affect them, it affects their feeders. So it affects the whole roots of the tree, their children, their, spouses, their brothers, their sisters, all. So anything that we can do to support them in that journey so that they don't reoffend is certainly been very rewarding.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time the reason that people reoffend is they're just not given the opportunity, or they don't have the opportunity to succeed, and out of desperation that's where they end up reoffending and in that pattern and that cycle, which is great, because if we're struggling for talent, what are the pools that we can help actually give those opportunities to, and ensure that we're making talent in the UK if it's not coming to us.
Exactly. And there's so many people in that network that are highly skilled as well, so that that is an area that I think that people think that they don't have, they may not have a lot of skills, but there's so many really skilled people within the prison network. So giving them that opportunity to train, keep themselves actively involved in those sorts of programs, giving them the opportunity for release on temporary license, and then permanent opportunities is the whole part of the Making Ground program.
Yeah, great. And the final kind of piece on, I guess, attraction and employee branding. I know you've got I believe you've got a specific focus on sort of diversity and inclusion, etc. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about, especially in construction, where it's like, heritage business, lots and lots of preconceived ideas from both sides of the fence, really. So I'd love to hear about how you're kind of breaking down those barriers, and again, providing opportunities for both parties to kind of succeed by giving opportunities to people from a diverse background, but also allowing them to thrive within the business. It'd be great to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think it's no secret that the industry is predominantly made up of white men. So we as a business are absolutely doing what we can to support people from disadvantaged backgrounds and or people from ethnic backgrounds that may not have even considered a career within construction. So we work really closely with local organisations within specific regions to support that. From a wider D&I piece, I talked about the Making Ground programme. We also have the Armed Forces Covenant, which we have re-signed as well. So working a lot with armed forces to help them once they're looking to leave the forces and move into Civvy Street, and that transition can be quite tough. So what programs do we have to support them in that journey? We are also signed up to the Care Covenant as well. So essentially that's supporting children that are either currently in care or have been in care, and getting them opportunities at the end of it, because when they turn 18, sometimes they can feel like they don't have that support because they're now older than that age when they would have the support from care. So with those three buckets, it's something that we're doing. We have a recruitment diversity manager that leads on all of those programs. From the early career space, we are absolutely working a lot with girls to get them excited about a career within construction. Most females, when they're at school, they don't even think about a career within construction because they think it's very manual, heavy lifting. It's a lads culture, and actually, back in the day, it absolutely was that. But we have a culture within career that we are very accepting and supporting, supportive of everybody. I think we do what's called expect respect training to ensure that people are respectful of anybody in the business, and unconscious bias training as well, to make sure that when we are recruiting into the business, that we aren't recruiting for people that are like you and I. We need a different type of people to make the business thrive. So there's lots of buckets. Nothing's going to cure everything overnight, but it's having something in place to constantly work on those.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got female friends that have been in construction for many, many years, and I think they're seeing a change, but still they feel the need to, if you're not willing to bend to that kind of culture, then actually you're probably it's gonna irritate you to the point where you're just gonna leave because it's too much of a challenge to overcome. But I think if organisations are doing things, I mean, it's all about human training.
Yes.
You can't put a plaster over it with technology or whatever. People are trying to do it with AI and all of that kind of stuff. But if that person turns up on day one and their boss is biased against them consciously or unconsciously,
Yep.
what was the point in going through an amazing unbiased selection process? There was no point whatsoever because they're going to be held back in their career. They are not going to get the opportunities that other people are, and ultimately they're going to leave your business and hopefully find something elsewhere. So it's amazing to hear that you've got those initiatives in place, from the agreements that you've got around prisons, etc. But also the training of your existing employees is just as important as selecting the right people.
Absolutely. That's fundamental for us. We also have allied groups as well that support different buckets of the business. So whether that's LGBTQ plus, whether that's females in construction, whether that is diversity as a whole. So we have different allied teams or groups that regularly meet to talk about that and how we can support people within the business, because I think that is something that it can't just be a HR initiative. It needs to be a business initiative that people are actively driving. So yeah, it's really successful.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So and there's still a long way to go for everybody, really. But the fact that you're doing something about it is awesome. In terms of the kind of, I guess, the next stage, if you like, it would be great to hear more about, from a 20 years of experience. I'm sorry to raise that again.
I know, make me feel old.
For those of you that can't see the blog, poor Nerida's face as I said that. The way that we're assessing candidates now, I believe, is changing and hopefully for the better. What's your kind of typical selection process or assessment process? And I guess, if you had to choose your favourite part when you're interviewing somebody, what would that be?
So we have different types of assessment process because it depends on the type of role. I think we're quite a different business because we have quite a large blue collar workforce, operative workforce. So those sorts of interview sort of styles and CVs, for example, will be very different to our leadership population or our more technical population, for example. So we try and recruit where possible for a skills versus experience piece. So that's to support us in bringing in diverse people in the industry. But yeah, so it absolutely will depend on the type of role that we're recruiting as to how, whether it's a traditional interview, for example, or a modern workforce. My favourite part about interviewing, or the favourite, this is going to sound really silly, but it's a bit like what we did at the start of this call. I really enjoy that first 5 or 10 minutes of just talking to a candidate and finding out about them as a person, mainly so I can build that rapport and to put them at ease as well, because I think it can be really nerve-wracking if people haven't been in interviews before, and the pandemic has meant that there's more people that were having to interview than ever before. So putting them at ease at the start and just finding out a little bit about them and what makes them happy, in order to put them at ease to then start the interview. I think that's definitely my favourite part. Obviously, making an offer is lovely as well, but I don't. The team tend to do that more than I do nowadays. But yeah, that's always a lovely thing, and I we've had many candidates over the last couple of years that have just been over the moon with an offer because it's meant so much to them in a really tough couple of years. So that's always really nice to be able to do that. But yeah, I like just learn. I'm a people person, so I just want to know what's happening with everybody in their sort of life outside of work.
I think it's a really important point because how often, especially in the roles that you have in construction, how often do you sit in front of 3 people and perform the job?
Yeah.
Probably never, right?
Yeah.
How often do you build rapport with somebody on a construction site? Every minute of the day.
Every minute. Yeah.
Right? And it's actually mind-boggling to think what we've been doing to assess somebody's capability at doing the role for so long is sat asking really prescriptive questions and then making a personal judgment on those individuals.
Yeah.
Not skills-based like you talked about. I think cultural fit, yes, absolutely. There's that we have to still do that. I think consistent questioning and panel interviewing, to me, should be done in an asynchronous manner where it is removing that unconscious bias, and then you move into or you either do skills based first and then you do the kind of cultural fit stuff at the end, the values based stuff. That's what an interview should focus on for me.
Yeah, see, I've never really liked the cultural fit piece because I feel like it can open up doors for people feeling like they need somebody to gel well with the team in order for them to be successful. But actually, people coming in with very different experiences can add so much value to the team, challenging how we've done things for so long, having an outside pair of eyes can be so important if you've got people in the workforce that have been there for such a long time as well. So I much prefer hiring for value rather than cultural fit for that reason. But you're right, like most of the calls that I have or interactions that I have with people I work with, it's not around the work they do. It's around, their family or their kids or their dogs. Actually, a lot of it is around football because I'm a massive West Ham supporter, which don't hold that against me. But so talking about football or talking about fantasy league, like you find so much out about people, and it's a nice thing. We spend so much time with people that we work with. I trust that the work they're doing it to their best of their ability. So that's something for their manager to sort of manage. With me, I just want to know about if their children are doing well in school, or if the dog has been spayed, for example, like little things like that. That's just that's what I love.
I think that speaks to the values, to your values. I think the thing with culture is if you're in a good culture, all you want to talk about is the culture. If you're in a bad culture, all you want to do is talk about how bad the culture is. And cultural fit for a bad culture is just a way of excluding people from from your business because they're not XYZ, right? And your preconception is that if they're not that, then they're not going to be successful. If your culture is inclusivity, diversity of thought, diversity of people, etc., then it's a great culture to have. And absolutely, they're great values that you want to assess for. So it's a fine line. And I always think, if you've been burnt by cultural fit, if you like, you carry that forever, and it's becomes a really difficult thing to kind of get over. But
candidates are asking more about. Candidates are really asking in interviews more about the values of businesses and their sustainability agendas, for example. Like those sorts of things are really important to people, and I think. In the past, it might have been people just looking for, okay, what sort of money would I earn for this role? But it's massively had a shift of actually what will my career path look like? So if I get this opportunity, what does that look like longer term for me? And what can the business support me on with that? Culture, it depends on line managers as well, doesn't it? So how do we support our team to live by those values that we have as a business, but also come with their authentic self as well. So there's definitely some balance, and there are pockets within organisations that we're not going to have a business that is 100% cultural fit isn't an issue. So yeah, there's definitely things that we need to do as a business to make sure it's outside of the whole organisation.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's something in the industry doing more at assessing for value rather than cultural fit.
Yeah, I think I agree, but I think the first thing people need to really nail is assessing for skills better than
Yeah.
a CV qualification.
Yeah.
Because if you get the skills, then if you can get the person with the right skills to do the job well, then what you should do is then have a culture that includes each and every one of those people that can perform the job, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I'm such an advocate. This is probably why I love our early careers program so much, because I think it allows for people to earn while they learn. We're constantly learning as people anyway, but for people to come in and be able to do the job and learn on the job rather than getting maybe a piece of paper that they got 5 years ago. They've probably forgotten it, and actually it's probably well out of date by now as well. So because everything evolves. But yeah, I came through a sort of a traineeship or apprenticeship style within in Australia, so I'm such a big advocate of earning while you learn.
Yeah, and geography really hasn't helped me be a founder of a tech business.
It's true. It's so true. Yeah.
Maybe hockey. I think hockey. Honestly, playing hockey has given me more skills than learning about fine sediment yields in a small Peak District stream, for example.
And do you know what? That's such an important thing as well, because when we speak to when we go to local schools and speak to them. For the Worktree events, for example, we talk about how important sport is to learn working as a team, communicating, leading, maybe being a captain. Like little things like that are going to add a lot of value to their personal skills and then lead into that professional skills as well. So yeah, I'm Australian, so we love sport. And actually, it's probably something that frustrates me the most about being in the UK, besides the weather, is that we don't really drive sport enough in the UK. If somebody has talent, what do they do? Like they might join a local school or a local club, and then that's sort of it. And I think there's so much can be said about getting involved in clubs and sports so early on, because it's absolutely going to support you in your working life.
It's when it comes to prowess in sport, it's luck of the draw as to what club you join as a child.
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
Like how seriously they take it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it's probably the same with schools in general as well. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Everything's a lottery in life, but but there you go. So final things really from me. I got two kind of top 3 questions, if you like. So as a recruitment professional, obviously recruiting lots of people for a very large organisation, if you could give in the current market kind of 3 top tips to candidates out there looking for a role at the moment, what would those 3 tips be?
So I think the 3 tips would be: don't wait for an opportunity to arrive. So don't wait to look for a job when you need a job. Network beforehand, have conversations with people, so that then when you are in a situation where you are looking, you'll have people that you can talk to authentically, rather than, I need a job, have you got anything? I think that's something that I would definitely advocate. And I have a lot of people that I've got that have approached me in that way, and I've gone back to them 3-4 months later and offered them jobs through that avenue. So that's definitely one. I think walk before you can run. I think there's also there's sort of there's a perception that if you're really good at the job you're doing now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be really good at that next level up. And actually, if there's the opportunity to step into a role on a secondment, um, that gives you the security to know for actually, is that what I want to do? Do I want to manage a team, or actually do I really like doing the doing? Do I like making the calls with candidates? Do I like finding
Yeah.
them, or do I want to manage the team and step away from that? Because that can be a really big transition.
Yeah.
And the final thing is, money isn't everything. You know, I think having a look at whether the values of the business reflect what you're looking for longer term. So me, for example, you know, I want flexibility to be able to have my face seen at the school gates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be going to if I'm looking for a job, for example, and the company that I'm going to be working for doesn't allow for that, or doesn't allow for part-time working if I want to reduce my hours, that says more to me about them as an organization, and that's not something that I want to work for, because I family is so important to me, and I want to instill those same values on my team. You know, I want them to have that balance. I want them to not feel guilty if they need to take their kids to the doctors during the day. You know, treat people as adults, for example. So, yeah, I think those are my three tips.
Okay, cool. And then the final question is, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I didn't put this in any emails that I've sent to you. But
No.
if you were to recommend, you know, one thing or one sort of technology to a fellow recruiter within an organisation, what technology, if any, have you gone, do you know what, that's really made a difference to my kind of day-to-day work?
Tough one, actually. I think a platform that we used during the pandemic was probably really critical for it to being a success. We used a technology called, should I name who they are?
Yeah, go for it. I don't care. Yeah.
I mean, it's awkward. So we used a technology called Sova, which allowed us to have virtual assessment centres. It
Right.
integrated the video platforms in that as well, but it had all of our assessing materials for both candidates and panel, and it held it in one space. So it meant that when we came to deliberations, we could instantly deliberate on candidates because it all collated it. It was really seamless for candidates, and it meant that us, from a panel point of view, from a GDPR, there was no papers flying around anywhere. You know, we could
The dream.
I mean, exactly. It was all held centrally. Candidates could upload their right to works, all of that sort of stuff. So it was a great system, actually. We had to use the system though because we're in a pandemic, and we couldn't do in-person assessment centres. But I fundamentally believe that technology allowed us to be able to be quite dynamic as a resourcing team as well. If a panel, you know, got COVID overnight and they weren't able to attend, we could just jump in because we were already available, ready.
Yeah, amazing.
And we had less dropouts from candidates and assessors, so it sort of allowed for that. So yeah, that was definitely a piece of technology that was that added a lot of value to us.
Yeah, great. It's the theme of flexibility, really, is, and I hope that you're still using it at least to some extent, because you can just save so much time, and your completion rate is much higher. You remove lots of barriers for travel, all of that kind of stuff. So it's good to hear, and also it enables panel interviewing, which I absolutely believe is the future of removing bias, because it is a human problem, not a technology one. If you put in, if you'd have said, we've used this amazing AI tool to remove bias from our process, I'd be like, oh my Lord, all you've done is allow one person's algorithm of bias to remove other people's.
And absolutely. And I think, that particular technology allowed us to evolve through that process as well. So like doing the group assessments was such an eye-opener to see candidates all joined in. But it was a lovely experience, but we've evolved it because we needed to as a business, but we're absolutely still using it because it's saved us money, as you said, with travel for both panel and candidates, but it allowed candidates to do it in the comfort of their own home, which made them feel more comfortable as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Again, it comes back to that point that, when was the last time that you did your job in front of 3 people?
Yes.
It just doesn't happen. So
No.
to enable a comfortable panel interview, you have to do something different.
And those panels that we do as well, they're different in each assessment that they do, and then the scores are sort of averaged out. So it allows for us to ensure that there isn't those unconscious bias if there are any that have sneaked in.
Great. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your valuable time. It's been a really enjoyable chat. Sounds like an amazing business. Obviously, I didn't know half of this stuff before we spoke. And it's so good to hear all of the kind of different initiatives that the business has and how you're trying to take what was a very traditional industry and difficult for a lot of people to get into and basically make those opportunities a reality for those people. So it's really good to hear. Thank you so much for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.